Next question. Allen Rubin.
Hi. A close friend of mine is related to a Chinese dissident. I got to ask him how he thought communism failed, and he surprised me because he said, no, it did not fail. It actually succeeded perfectly in consolidating power and reproducing itself. That made me think that any system that creates surplus, because they have to create surplus, the alternative is scarcity. Any system that creates surplus, those that choose to allocate it become the ruling class. With capitalism, it could be the VCs, the CEOs. With communism, it's the Soviets or the central planners. My question is, does surplus make hierarchy inevitable?
You can respond to it first.
Yes, I would say that if you actually read Marx profoundly, you find out that his critique is exactly about value. He says we live in a society that is subordinated by the rule of value, the value form. What does the value form mean? It means that this abstract measure dominates all our lives. This is if you read chapter 1. He doesn't get into the relations of production until much later. In chapter 1, it's all about this upside down world in which the world of commodities dominates who we are and how we think. And this value, the value form, is exactly materialized in greater monetary accumulation and capital, which is surplus value. So I would say absolutely yes. The idea of the subversion of the pillars of capitalism, something that, by the way, China did not subvert because the wage relation remains in China, okay? The subversion of the pillars of capitalism, wage labor, and private property of the means of production are all about emancipating ourselves from the rule of the value form that deeply, deeply influences and limits what are ultimately potentials for economic justice that as human beings we're intelligent enough to understand. Is it possible that the whole West is watching when there's a genocide in action as we speak? Hundreds of children die every day of planned starvation and of bombs, and we're just watching and pretending this is not happening, and this supposedly is better than what the Nazis were doing with the Jewish concentration camp? No. There was a genocide under Nazism, and there's a genocide in action today. And the fact that we are able to silence this, to bracket this, while there's profit being made, not just by the big corporations in arms, also by Google, Microsoft, and the entire of the global elite, and we're just accepting the genocide, this, I'm sorry, is exactly the subordination to the value form, is our incapacity to actually behave in a human way because we're alienated by the economic form we live in.
So I'd ask the general question of all of you. Which of these two competing systems, Marxism or capitalism, has proven more conducive?
Marxism is not a competing system.
It absolutely is a competing system.
Marxism is not a competing system.
May I answer the question? All right. Which of these two competing systems, Marxism or capitalism, is more conducive to the aggregation, centralization, and exercise of political power over history in its attempted practice? And I think the answer of that is unambiguous. Marxism results in a centralization of political power, and that centralization of political power seems to yield over and over and over again regimes that are characterized by totalitarianism, by atrocity. I am not saying capitalism is without fault. I'm not saying it is blameless. I've never maintained that at all. But do we blame every random genocide in human history and every random act of imperialism or colonization in human history on capitalism? I don't think that's fair at all. In fact, if you go back to the 19th century, the loudest and most vociferous critics of imperialism and colonialism come from the free market liberal school of classical economics, long before Karl Marx is even putting pen to paper. Can we credit them, at least for some of their own ideas in bettering human conditions, for advocating for things like the abolition of slavery or the ending of the East India Company's colonization and terrorization of the Indian subcontinent? These messages are there in Adam Smith. These messages are there in the classical economists, the very same economists that Karl Marx set out to critique and in some cases attempted to rebut. You know, if we're going to have an open discussion of competing systems of value and competing theories, we have to at least take them on the face value of what their most prominent articulators and defenders happen to say. And in Marx's case, that is Marx himself and a successor of regimes that purported to act on Marxist terms. But in capitalism's case, that's also people like Adam Smith.
Okay, I think it's important to distinguish here the question of whether Marxism is its own system. because this seems to be a major point of contention. And the first question was about this. If it's a methodology for looking at things and has value by virtue of its method, not necessarily the system it suggests, is it really fair to
And can I just make a side note? Marx never suggested any economic system. If you read Marx, he did not have a template about what a post-capitalist society would look like, exactly because in his own methodology, he doesn't believe in universalizations that can be abstracted. Alternatives emerge in the making. In the making of change, you will find out what the best solution is. Marx had no script of what the world should look like. This is why this is completely not the historical interpretation of what's happening. But anyway.
I would urge anyone to read Marx's own writings, both his letters and his public writings on the Paris Commune in 1873, if you want a glimpse of what he thinks should be done and how this system should be implemented. He is, in fact, very
but that's a particular. That's
It is
a particular.
It absolutely is.
Particular, exactly.
It absolutely
he did
is.
not,
It's not a
he did
universal
not
system.
prescribe the Soviet Union or any other
Okay.
government.
We're going to move to the next question.